Joe Rogan had Jim Gaffigan on his show, and I mean, that's not really relevant, except that's just the other voice that you're hearing here.
He's like, yeah, false flag, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he tries to push back slightly. I can't put this on Gaffigan.
Yeah, Gaffigan,
of course.
Gaffigan gets a pass. He gets the Hot Pocket pass.
I can't imagine like watching Joe Rogan's show. It's just like so inconsistent. It's just like he has 3 types of guests on, like comedians you remember from Netflix comedy specials from like 10 years ago. No shade, they're all good comedians. Like, who doesn't love Bill Burr? Like insane people, just like literal people who come on and go like, I think vaccines are poison, and then like every so often he'll have one like Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's the thing is like it's so depressing that this guy has been basically elevated to squat the intersection of like masculinity and curiosity.
Yes.
And so like people be like, oh yeah, we hear all this interesting stuff like Neil deGrasse Tyson. Yeah, but you also hear 3 hours of like Douglas Murray and all these other like freaks that are preoccupied with like wokeness and stuff like that.
Yeah, but you could also just like read stuff about astrophysics or watch stuff specifically about that.
But that's harder. Yeah. What he does is he provides like these kinds of people who nominally have credentials, right? And then you can list them. But when you dig deep, they're just all providing counter narratives, meaning it's pseudoscience.
Yeah. He lets his audience pretend they're intellectually curious just by like watching his show.
And then, I mean, all those 3 guest examples, though, that you list, Brandon, are kind of better alternatives than him just going freestyle like he does here, because it got him, I think, in a little bit of hot water when he said that, or claimed to have personal someone he knows personally tell him about kitty litter boxes in schools and children identifying as cats, which ended up like getting him a little bit in trouble with his Spotify corporate overlords, because like that's just made up. And this also might get him in trouble. This is him talking about January 6th, and specifically, he references Ray Epps, who is currently suing Fox News for defamation for making claims like this.
I think the January 6th thing is pretty bad.
Well, the January 6th thing is bad, but also the intelligence agencies were involved.
This is actually such a distilled essence of what Rogan's purpose is now. It's to like, people have like accurate conclusions, like January 6th is bad. Yeah, bro, but you know what? Actually, it's like, you know what I would say if I was doing this thing about, like, you know what's like, actually the problem is maybe with the FBI and how they didn't act as if like there was a BLM protest. Like they did half the security of like a typical like protest after a cop kills somebody.
Yeah.
If you're interested, go ahead.
No, continue.
I was gonna say, if you're interested in the FBI entrapping people into crimes they otherwise wouldn't commit, there's a long list of like Muslim teenagers with intellectual disabilities that you can go down, which has formed like the basis of all FBI counterterrorism statistics in America for like the past 20 years.
Yeah, this century.
So, like, or like eco groups, right? Like, they've only become interested in this kind of entrapment now that they imagine it's used against them.
They did it in Black Lives Matter protests. We had Trevor Aronson on, a journalist who's documenting this in a podcast that's actually informative called Alphabet Boys. So that's the reality of entrapment, as you say, Brandon, like in terms of what the FBI is doing. But let's just go back to the beginning, because I just like the titular butt from Rogan in response to an uncontroversial statement by his guest.
Yeah, and just one more citation before I switch over. I helped destroy people. This is the Terry Albury, who was the former FBI agent who whistle blew about how he was just like following Muslims around Minneapolis for the post 9/11 period.
Yeah.
I think the January 6th thing is pretty bad.
Well, the January 6th thing is bad, but also the intelligence agencies were involved in provoking people to go into the Capitol building. That's a fact.
No.
So wait a minute. You're saying that guy,
like the president,
what's his name?
Ray Epps.
Yeah, you really think that he?
I don't know, but I do know that
every other apparent. I think he's going to sue Fox.
I think every other person who was involved in January 6th, who was involved in coordinating a break-in into the Capitol and in instigating people breaking, they were all arrested. This guy wasn't. Not only that, they were defending him in the New York Times, the Washington Post, those different things, because saying that Fox News is unjustly accused him of instigating. Well, he clearly instigated. He did it on camera. I don't know if he was a Fed. I know a lot of people think he was a Fed. The people that were there.
But we have to pause on that. Like one guy instigated all these hogs as opposed to was like just participating in all this stuff. Like, I'm glad that Joe Rogan and all these guys want to see every last person prosecuted, even no matter how much they like cooperate with authorities or whatever. But like that's just like not. That's just like not a realistic.
There are other people who were there on January 6th who haven't been arrested. Is he accusing them of being a Fed, or is he just doing this because like QAnon saw him whispering in one photo and they decided, oh, let's make an entire conspiracy theory about this guy who was, I mean, a Tucker Carlson watching member of the Oath Keepers who voted for Trump twice. The idea that he's some sort of federal agent is hilarious.
Yeah, and like this is from the July 13th, and again, like I don't follow all this stuff super closely, but like Ray Epps should be criminally charged for events on January 6th, his attorney says. An attorney for Ray Epps, man seen wearing blah blah blah, says his client has been informed by federal law enforcement officials that they intend to charge him in connection with events that day. So like, what are we even talking about?
Yeah. Go ahead, Brandon.
No, I mean, I just think it's amazing that like Fox News and a lot of these outlets are clearly crossing a line when it comes to targeting private citizens just for clout. And I think it's, it's sad that we've gotten to this place with online and even mainstream content creation where they feel comfortable targeting private citizens for like internet videos who, they're still allowed their due process, as we're constantly reminded of by right wingers, how important due process is. And it's clear that they just feel like there's no consequences for this kind of witch hunt leading, even though they will often accuse the left of it, of engaging in like cancel culture, when stuff like this is the stuff that's clearly going to get you in trouble with like a civil like defamation case, like implying that someone is a federal officer, implying that somebody has committed a crime, or really just saying it like online or on your platform. And it's clear that I think a lot of the past 5, 6, maybe, more years online has been concerned with these informal sanctions for like, essentially harassing people online using your platform. And now they're finally starting to bring down like these formal, I'm taking Alex Jones to court, I'm taking Fox News to court, I have the money, I'm going to see you in court. And it's clear they've never conceived of this as a real possibility outside of just like, the only consequences for me is that I might lose my channel or have my like account banned for a few weeks on Twitter. And it's amazing to see, like, I think online has become way too real for some people.
Well, I think the corporate media that owns that owns Joe Rogan's program, Spotify, paid $200 million for it, might be a little bit upset to hear about this kind of meandering, pontificating on Rogan's program, given the fact that Epps' defamation lawsuit against Fox seems pretty open and shut.
Yeah, I mean, let's be clear. I have a big heart. I'm able to open it up and be sympathetic to propagandized Trumpers who were misled into the Capitol. To the extent, like, when I actually am able to care about that, the people that I blame, the sort of positions of authority, the connected to the government people that I blame are, for instance, Donald Trump and the co-conspirators mentioned that were counted on the Insurrection Act. They looked at these people like fodder. And so like Glenn Greenwald can act with his crocodile tears about Ashley Babbitt all he wants, but the truth is Ashley Babbitt was killed by the people who lied about this election. And all these people, including Glenn, cannot actually be direct about that. It's this, every little voter restriction could go into voter suppression, but you know what? The liberals are being, no, man.
It's all about liberal vibes.
Exactly. And,
as opposed to substantive lies.
Those people were, and some of them absolutely knew that it was just a pretense. But to the extent that you're cared about people propagandized into it, you, to focus on like these peripheral guys instead of the actual people at the head of the party is I mean, not worth taking seriously. It should be treated with contempt.
Well, yeah, and it's also about, like you said, it's about pointing the finger away from the content creators of variety of platforms who are actually instigating or like doing all, anti-vaxxer propaganda, stop the steal propaganda. It's about removing the accountability from those people because they're just sharing their views and putting them onto some sort of nebulous deep state that can, pop up whenever you need a convenient scapegoat. Like, if we're looking for people who instigated this, like, how can you be a bigger instigator than the president of the United States of America?
Nope. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they exist to defend and obscure that. And that's why Robbie Soav, all these libertarians, they exist to protect that.
Let's keep going.
Justly accused him of instigating. Well, he clearly instigated. He did it on camera. I don't know if he was a Fed. I know a lot of people think he was a Fed. The people that were there were calling him a Fed. What I do know is when they asked the FBI, the FBI said, we can't tell you whether or not there were people that were there that were doing that. Now, there's been reports that there was hundreds of agents that were there that were doing that. I don't know if that's true either. But I do know that they do use agent provocateurs to disrupt peaceful protests. It's a common tactic. What they do is, say if there's like the World Trade Organization is a great example. And that was in, I think, the 90s in Seattle. And so what they did was...
No, give him more... Actually, again, chicken shit. This is how you know that this guy has consciousness about who he's appealing to. The most recent example, Jamie, look this up, is what I just referenced. The Black Lives Matter protesters. That is proven at this point. Listen to the Alphabet Boys podcast. Listen to the reporting on that front. They did that. They hire the FBI field office in Denver. I want to make sure I'm getting the facts right here, but Bradley, if you don't mind looking up the details of that. The FBI field office in Denver was involved in getting this known criminal, Mickey whatever, to provoke violence at Black Lives Matter protests. That's exactly true, but he doesn't cite that example because his audience is not going to be happy to hear about that.
Dakota also, those people need to be monitored, so it doesn't count.
Yeah, Dakota Access Pipeline protester Red Fonfallis, a gun was planted on her by an FBI informant.
The FBI recruited Mickey
seduced her, right?
Who seduced her and appeared as just so this does happen, and this sort of like using that reality, which these people do never want to actually wrestle with when it affects the left. They're just completely oblivious about it. To use that to excuse and sort of obscure the reality that there is a violent reaction in this country, I think is ludicrous. And it's funny because like they'll deny this. This is actually a very interesting thing. They deny like the seriousness of Jan 6. Yet Glenn Greenwald is out there yesterday saying, hey, these people will riot if they don't get what they want. Yeah, we know, Glenn.
Yes, that's the seriousness. Okay, so from Bradley, per CBS News here, thank you for looking this up. The FBI recruited Michael Mickey Windecker, a violent felon with sexual assault conviction, and paid him tens of thousands of dollars during the summer of 2020 to pose as a racial justice activist. There we go. So let's see. Maybe he'll cite that example. Let's go.
What they do is, say if there's like the World Trade Organization is a great example. And that was in, I think, the 90s in Seattle. And so what they did was they were protesting the World Trade Organization. They were doing it peacefully. It was a big problem. So what they did is they sent in, allegedly, agent provocateurs. They started smashing buildings and lighting things on fire. Now it's not a peaceful protest. Now they can bring in the police. Now they can start arresting people. And then they created a no protest zone where literally if you had a pin on your jacket that was the WTO with a red line through it, they would not let you cross. You could not cross with a pin that was against the WTO and go to work. There was a no protest zone. So they silenced protest, which is a part of our freedom of speech. So this is a tactic that some government agencies use to stop peaceful protest.
I wish the World Trade protests were as aggressive as Jan 6. We might be living in a different world, but continue, Joe.
So they silenced protest, which is a part of our freedom of speech. So this is a tactic that some government agencies use to stop
but wait a minute.
protest.
All right, so what you're saying is on January 6th, that this event that obviously Trump organized. Forget about the Giuliani stuff and the
Gaffigan
whether
W
they
here.
thought that it was.
He definitely
stolen.
encouraged
trying.
people to protest.
Yes. But all right. So you're saying that like
Definitely.
the
Just protest.
FBI
Just
and Nancy
protest.
Pelosi and I'm
not saying Nancy
Be
No,
like
no,
Gandhi.
but like you're saying that like they're like
Non-violence.
we'll make this instead of an awkward protest, we'll encourage it so that it'll backfire on Trump rather than being this rising of people that believe that there was election corruption.
I think it's certainly
I think
possible.
that would be hard. Do you
Great
think it's
question.
possible?
Great
I think
question,
it's
Jim.
possible.
You don't think it's, wait a minute, you think it's hard to do?
I think that that
Doesn't make
the
sense.
FBI or the CIA saying, hey, Trump lost this election, because here's what you're kind
We
of
should get
implying.
Gaffigan on our show.
Trump lost the election. He is such an amazing communicator, and he's convinced this loyal base that there was election interference. We don't want them to protest. How we can end this is if we encourage people to go beyond protesting to essentially go into the Capitol and take a shit in the hallway. I mean, I'm exaggerating
Right.
a little bit.
Yeah.
But like, I don't see why that would be of use. Like, I'm more suspicious why Trump didn't call for backup when
God. Okay.
for the Capitol Police. You know what I mean? It's like there was, and that like Michael Flynn's brother was, you know what I mean? Like there's way more conspiracy stuff against Trump, and then
Yeah,
I
because he's
think
the one that did the conspiracy.
I just want to hear the response of Rogan, and then we'll wrap up here. Just because, like, God bless you, Jim Gaffigan, but yes, if you could just skip to it, yeah.
He loves to confront like normal guests with like the craziest conspiracy theory that he could possibly think of, and then this is a good example of why that doesn't work on like normal people, because they just go like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Like, what's the why would they go through to such obscure and esoteric methods to achieve such like ludicrously unhelpful ends? But that's like classic conspiracy brain. Like, of course they would, and they left clues everywhere.
Right.
All right, let's hear what he says.
so that we can arrest 300 people. Does that make sense?
No, it doesn't make sense. No, I think it's a standard tactic, especially when someone is the enemy of the intelligence agencies. With Trump, that's absolutely the case. Trump set himself up against the intelligence agencies. He did it openly, and he did it brazenly. And a lot of people think it's very dangerous. Like, the intelligence agencies are very important. You want to find out what's going on in
All right,
other
let's
countries.
just
You
pause
want to
it
find out.
because this is just drivel. But the point is, like, he's opening up himself up for litigation, and it's the guy who pretends that he's challenging the powerful has seemingly no understanding of who the intelligence agencies really are after, and they have an ideological tilt towards Republicans that's well documented.
Yeah, and this is the difficult part about like incredibly well-platformed conspiracy theorists, is because they have that little nugget of truth that, like, yes, obviously intelligence agencies are well documented to infiltrate various, political groups for, as long as they've existed, both the political groups and the intelligence agencies, obviously. Yeah. And the right likes to selectively acknowledge stuff like prison brutality or like the overzealousness of our prosecutors, and they'll make fun of it, or they will like make light of it, or say other populations deserve it when it happens to them 99.99% of the time, and then they'll dare you to not cater to whatever narrative they're trying to put forth that happens to acknowledge a tiny sliver of the prison industrial complex or the military industrial complex, because some people are just so glad that for once Joe Rogan's talking about like COINTELPRO, and you're like, oh my God, like he knows. Like, of course they know, they're just bigots. They just think it's good when it happens to BLM people, and that it's bad when it happens to Jan 6ers, and they have to twist themselves into pretzels to make that seem like not just a bigoted statement, but it's just obvious by the things they choose to highlight.
It's an extension of like their anti-tech argument. They really don't care about big tech. They just want their kind of guys leading it.
I'm a big CIA critic. Actually, the guy that the CIA is very afraid of, and I'm president now. Here's my first CIA director, Mike Pompeo. Here's my second CIA director, Gina Haspel.
Torture queen.
CIA hates me.
Yep. Pathetic. Dumb.